we do indeed. So rather than finding Ribbon and her little ones at the hyena den, look who's sitting here. Little Xongile. So she was sitting right at the termite mound where the den is. I think she maybe was having a little investigation as to what's going on, and has just popped up to this little tree just to look around. And isn't she spectacular? So it's really good to see her. Now she's going further up the tree, which is going to be really pretty. Now, I think I'm going to just try and reposition ourselves slightly, because we've got lots of branches in the way, so just give me 2 seconds to reposition. But isn't this amazing? Now she needs to be very careful, because this is not the great place for a leopard to be sitting. At the end of the day, she shouldn't really be close to a hyena den, because if Ribbon comes back and finds this leopard close to her little ones, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier, in that we were saying that she's going to have a lot of issues with predators, and if she sees predators she might move the little ones. Now Xongile being here might trigger this hyena to then take her little ones away and move them somewhere else. So it's not an ideal thing for Ribbon, but it's also not ideal for Xongile, because she's quite small, and a hyena of Ribbon size would definitely be able to cause a few issues for little Xongile. So she needs to be a little bit careful with what's going on. Look at that big yawn. Good morning, girl. And isn't that the most beautiful pose? And I'm sure she's still on the lookout for Karula, and that's why she's moving all these areas trying to find her mom and her brother. But she is absolutely beautiful, and she's looking in good condition, considering that she's been on her own and she's having to fend for herself, and she's still a young girl that's not exactly very big. She's looking absolutely beautiful, and doesn't look like she's too thin. So she looks like she's doing just fine. I'm sure she's feeding off small little things at the moment, so she'll be going after probably those terrapins and varying other small animals that she can then feed on. And look at that, she's now found herself a perfect spot up at the top. It's not ideal for us because of the view, but it is really, really pretty for her. I would imagine she can see quite far from up there. She's got a nice view of the sunrise. So, clever girl. So literally, you're wondering if Tingana would hurt Xongile if they met. No, I don't think so. I think Tingana has been seen with Xongile and Hosana a few times, and he'll know who Xongile is through the scent that she leaves behind. He'll know that this is one of his offspring and one of Karula's cubs, and so in all likelihood, no, he wouldn't, unless there's possibly a food item and Xongile gets a bit brave and tries to defend her carcass from Tingana. Then maybe he might sort of lash out at her and potentially hurt her, but I don't think so. I think she would probably, in all likelihood, Tingana would just sort of take the kill and then carry on. But he knows that this is one of his offspring. I mean, he's spent time with them before, so I don't think he's going to worry too much. Now I'm just trying to get into a position where we don't have a massive branch in front of us, and it seems like that's going to be a little bit better. Craig, is that better for you? Yes, I think so. And this is such a beautiful tree that she's sitting in. Like I say, if one of the hyenas had to come in here, they're going to be very, very surprised if Ribbon had to rock up and see this leopard sitting over the tree. And it's going to be dangerous for those little babies, because if they had to come out, Xongile is much bigger than one of the hyena cubs and would definitely be able to pull out one of those cubs out of the hole. So maybe why she's up here, maybe she's heard something in there and she's sort of thinking that it could be warthogs, or and sort of is now sitting and watching and hoping that they come out and she can then potentially hunt them. But isn't that spectacular? Oh, hello, my girl. David, I'm sure she can. She came from the hole of the den itself, so I'm sure she can smell those cubs, and she knows that there's little ones around here. Whether or not she's experienced enough to know that she can take advantage and potentially hunt them, I'm not quite sure. You know, she's a young girl and she's had very little exposure to hyenas, because remember, in her sort of formative years as she's grown up, there actually hasn't been too many hyenas around here, so she hasn't had that much experience. So I don't know if she would even perceive them as a threat or as food items. So it'll be interesting to see what her behavior is from the tree now, whether she moves on or if she actually sits here and just watches this mound all day long. It seems like she's going to come down now, or not. Maybe she's going to just find herself a better spot to lie down. And isn't that spectacular? Absolutely magnificent. There's always something about a leopard sitting in a tree that just really kind of takes your breath away and makes you sort of appreciate the beauty of them, as well as the sort of niche that they have and the ability to be able to go up into these trees and sort of, with the size that they have, spend time and be so at home up there is quite incredible. She's just watching over. So there's a couple of other vehicles that are joining us this morning that are from the commercial lodges. So we've got Rexon and Rolf that are coming, and they're all enjoying this beautiful view of Xongile. You can see she's almost watching them too. It's, I think, a case of who's watching who at this stage. And those sort of grey clouds also add a bit of a mood to the whole scene as well. It's not just a blue sky behind her, it's sort of this grey appearance. It's very, very pretty. And I don't think she's going to be up there for too much longer. She's still looking around. I think she, in all likelihood, is probably going to get up and move and come down the tree. And this is what leopards will often do, is they often utilize fallen over trees like this just to be able to see what's going on around them and just be able to spot anything. As for Nat.Geo, you're wondering, would a female leopard adopt a orphan? So if potentially Krula was dead, would somebody like Tundi or Shadow adopt them? Well, it's not unheard of. It has happened. So I know on Mala Mala it did happen, where a female adopted two young males, but it's very, very, very seldom. Most of the time, females have the urge to breed themselves, so they're not going to want to look after somebody else's young. They're going to try and have their own cubs and try and get their bloodline to go forward. Also, it's because you'll find that female territories generally are quite sort of separated, and it's very seldom that a cub is going to wander into another female's territory. They tend to stay in the heart of their territories when they're lost, and so it's very, very seldom that you're going to find a cub coming across an adult female that doesn't potentially have cubs at the time. If they do have cubs, so let's say in the case of both Shadow and Tundi, who have both got cubs at the moment, they're going to see this young leopard as a threat, and they will then potentially attack her. So it's very, 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 very unlikely that they would adopt an orphan, but it has happened. I know, like I say, on Mala Mala it did happen a few years ago, where two male leopards were adopted by a female, but it is very uncommon. But isn't that spectacular? Look at that. You're looking very pretty, my girl, very regal this morning. Right, so we're going to carry on with Xongile and see where she goes to and what she gets up to this morning. And while we do that, let's go across to Ali and see how she's doing and whether she's had any luck with Mvula or Tingana. Well, Xongile is still sitting in her tree. She's just sharpening her claws and having a little groom, and she's been watching and looking around and seems very happy with her fallen over marula. So she's providing an absolute spectacle for everybody by sitting up here. You can imagine it's just such a pretty picture to see her just standing up in this sort of boughs of this fallen over marula. Absolutely beautiful. Sandra from Northern Australia, who I believe is sitting with Taylor McCurdy. You're wondering whether leopards are solitary. Well, yes, they are solitary cats, other than when they have cubs. So when a female has her cubs, then she'll stay with them for anywhere between 14 months and sort of 8 to 20 months. That's about the sort of general sort of feel of it. They sometimes go a little bit more. I have seen a male stay with his mom until he was almost 4, but that's very unusual. But the male's completely solitary, and if the female doesn't have her cubs, then she'll be solitary as well. So they're only sort of true solitary cats of the African bush, and they'll spend a lot of time on their own. Now, this little female is on her own because she's looking for her mom and her brother. Unfortunately, they've all been separated recently, and there's been no sign of the mom for the last sort of 2.5 weeks, which is making everybody a little bit concerned. She is of the age where she could potentially have been left by mom. Her mother is sort of getting a little bit older though, so that's where the concern comes in, is that she is 13 and it's potentially something has gotten to her. But it's not uncommon for leopards to sometimes leave their cubs at this sort of age for long periods of time, and the reason for that is that they're trying to start severing that bond. They know that they're going to start to come into estrus cycles again, and they want to start breeding, and so some females will leave their cubs earlier than others. Like I say, I have seen some females tolerate their cubs until sort of almost 4 years, and others that leave their cubs at 10 months, 11 months, so it's sort of very variable amongst the females. Now, with Karula, I'm just trying to remember with all the other cubs that she's had, whether she leaves them early or not, but I think it's dependent. I think dependent on males that are around, any lions that we could potentially have around that maybe disturb her, and if she gets new males often, then she'll break off of those cubs and try and start going towards that male and mating with them so that she can have a fresh litter that the male won't kill. And once the cubs are on their own, particularly a female like this, you're going to find that those males know that this is a potential mating right later on, and so they'll actually leave the female alone. Now, her brother, who's also around somewhere in this area, tends to hang out a little bit further south in the last few weeks. He's going to have a huge threat from big male leopards, so as soon as he hears a big male leopard, he's probably going to try and move to another area. Now, talking about big male leopards, I believe Ali has managed to find one, so let's go over to her and see who she's got. Little Xongile has decided to just take a very, very comfortable nap by the looks of it. She's curled herself into a tight little ball right next to us, and I think she's decided this is where she wants to nap for now. And I suppose there's no problem with that. It's a cloudy, overcast morning, so there's no sun that's going to beat down on her, so she can lie right out in the open just like that. No problem. Now, I believe Brent has been regaling you with stories of elephant tusks, and there really are some incredible tuskers out there. They're some amazing, amazing individuals, and I'm sure Brent has seen some amazing individuals in his life. I've been fortunate enough also to see some of the big guys up in Tsavo National Park in East Africa. It's incredible, the sort of size of those tusks up there. And then in Northern Kruger, you also get these massive guys as well. So pretty cool. But as you can see, Xongile is lying right near us. She's having a very, very nice nap. She got interrupted by two wildebeest, so we had two wildebeest bulls that came running past, which she briefly for one moment thought maybe about hunting, and then she realized the size of these wildebeest, and she then backed down quite quickly and decided just to lie down in this little thicket. Now, I don't think she's going to do too much from here. I'm sure she's going to just sort of spend the day resting in this area and sort of looking around and hoping that Karula is somewhere around here and she can hear some sort of sign of her. It's unfortunately the case of that's how it's going to be for the next little bit for her. She's going to have to kind of move small little places and hope that by some chance she bumps into Karula in this area somewhere. Now, I know there's lots of debate going on, and Brent touched on it as well. And I'm not sure. I don't think that she's dead. I think she's just off doing her own thing. I remember with Brent, I was saying to Brent when he first started, I remember chatting to him and he was saying to me that he hardly ever saw Karula. So she does do this sometimes. She does sometimes just disappear. And in the Manyeleti, the southern Manyeleti, there's very little that goes on in terms of updates that we get from that sort of area. And so she could be just in that section and busy with other things, and she'll then make an appearance again. I'm hoping that Xongile does find something to eat, because she is looking a little bit skinny, so it would be good if she could find something. Unfortunately, because she's now without mom, she's going to be surviving on small items, so you'll find that she's going to be utilizing insects, terrapins, tortoises, birds, and that's how it's going to be until she gets a little bit bigger and stronger and is able then to catch these larger prey items like impalas. So it's going to be a tough few months for her, but she should be okay. Leopards are a very resourceful animal, and generally they find a way to survive. Now we're going to sit with her a little bit longer and just see if she decides maybe to move. And while we do that, let's go back to Brent so he can continue his discussion on the elephant tusks. Well, Ali, I'm afraid we're playing the exact same game on this side. Our leopard is also sleeping, so it's also a patience game, waiting for Xongile to decide to wake up. But it does look like she is down for the day. She's only this little ear flicking every now and then. Otherwise, she's taking it very, very easy. It's not moving too much at all, and is I think had probably quite a long night. Maybe she's moved around quite a bit during the night, and who knows what she got up to. Like I say, she must have come from quite far, because I didn't see any tracks crossing from sort of Weaver's Nest side further east, so she must have come from Treehouse Dam and that way. So it must have been a tough evening, and now it's time for rest. So, William, you're wondering if she's sleeping near the vehicles for safety. No, I don't think so. I mean, we were closer to her earlier, and she wasn't really too concerned, and she was kind of moving around. I think it's more a fact that she's found herself like a little sort of cove of trees. Now, there's some trees on her southern side, on her western side, on her eastern side, so she's kind of hidden in here, and it's a nice place for her just to lie down. Also, because of sort of today's weather, she can lie right out in the open, and so the vehicle is kind of just parked in an area where she maybe just decided that it was good to lie. I don't think she's actually using the vehicles, because otherwise she would be lying much closer and almost underneath the cars, whereas now she's sort of lying just off to the side, and if we move, I don't think she's going to move. So if I had to leave her now, I'm pretty sure she'll just stay sleeping exactly where she is. She's not going to move from there. So I don't think it's that. Also, even we've noticed in the last few days or last few weeks that she's been on her own, that she doesn't spend that much time near vehicles or with vehicles. She kind of moves around, and when the vehicles do find her, she actually spends a lot of time walking. So I'm not sure that would ring true, but it's possible. You never know. She's in a sort of confused state at the moment. She doesn't know where her sibling is, her mother, so it's tough. So Lexi, who's 5 years old, good morning Lexi, I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'm glad that you are watching our beautiful little Xongile. You want to know whether her fur is very, very soft. Well, their fur is not as soft as you would think, so it's not like a domestic cat that has very soft fur, and it's because these guys spend a lot of their time lying in the sand and in the dust, and they have carcasses that they feed on, like what Tingana's got, and so they get lots of little things inside their fur, so their fur becomes actually quite bristly, so it's almost like a hard brush. That's what it feels like, and it's not as bad as something like a lion. A lion has a much more sort of coarse hair, whereas these little leopards, theirs is a little bit softer, but it's not as soft as a domestic cat. It doesn't feel like soft velvety fur. It feels a little bit kind of hard, and it's almost like a brush that you would sweep the floor with, something like that. But they do try to keep themselves as clean as possible. You will find that she'll groom herself and try to get rid of all that dust and soil and all of that, but unfortunately, because they spend most of their day lying in it, it's generally a little bit on them at all times. But what is amazing is watch her ear. So even though she's fast asleep and she's tucked up in this tight little ball, you'll find that she'll move her ear every now and then, and any little sound that is natural. So me talking doesn't affect it at all. But if a Franklin alarm calls, or she hears sort of any natural sound, that ear immediately starts twitching and moving and trying to pick up and locate exactly what that sound is. And so she's utilizing all of those sounds to determine what's in her environment, even though she is resting and sleeping. She's going to be quite tired. So what I might actually do is I might go back towards the hyena den and just see. You never know, with all the commotion there, maybe Ribbon was somewhere close by and has now come back just to see if everything's okay. So it might be worth just checking what's happened there and see if everything's all right. And then we can come back to little Xongile a little bit later and see if maybe she's deciding to be a little bit more cooperative and moving around. But for now, I think she's going to have a very, very long nap. She seems like she's very tired. Shame, little Xongololo. It's been a tough few weeks for you, my girl. Now, hopefully on the way out, there is a beautiful butterfly that's sitting on a grass stalk. So Xongile has just popped out next to us here. We were coming past just to see what she's up to, and she's popped out next to us chasing little dwarf mongoose. So both the little royal pair are in the process of chasing. Now, Hosana unfortunately chased his warthogs into little Gowrie, so I couldn't follow him any further. But the good news is that he was following track for track. Xongile was walking right on top of her tracks, so I think he was actually following her and then bumped into the warthogs and ended up getting a bit distracted. But that's really good news for this afternoon, because I think once he's finished with his warthogs, if he doesn't catch them, he's going to carry on coming up and trying to follow Xongile's tracks, and I wouldn't be surprised that the two of them end up being a treehouse dam together this afternoon, which would be really, really spectacular and would be a perfect setup for Karula to come strolling in the late afternoon light and to come and save us all from the sort of depths of our despair in the sort of thoughts of her maybe being dead. So that's what I'm going to hope for this afternoon, and it'll be a great way to finish the weekend if that did happen. But little Xongile still hasn't moved too far, and like I say, she saw some dwarf mongoose running across the road, so she got very interested in it, and you can see she's kind of in that pose where she was ready to start chasing, but she was a little bit slow on the uptake, and unfortunately I think they've all disappeared now before she could get anywhere near them. And she's still listening and still watching. What are you doing, little cat? Shame. It's also getting hot now. She's sitting right in the sun. We've got two big marula trees above us, and there's lots of shade, but she's managed to find the only sun spot on that whole entire section of road. You can see it's shady on either side of where she's sitting, so she needs to move a little bit if the sun's going to start affecting it, because it actually feels very warm now that the sun is out. So I'm sure she's going to get hot if she stays there, and hopefully for her she's going to find herself a nice place just to relax for the day, and maybe even a little dwarf mongoose as a meal. I know that Hosana has caught one before, so maybe Xongile will have learned from him and be able to do it. But you can see the way that she stalks in comparison to him is far more timid. She tends to sit and watch and wait and kind of spend a long time processing what's going on, whereas Hosana is very active in his hunt. In those warthogs, he was right behind them the whole time, and when you guys left us, those warthogs had just run a little bit. We then managed to come round and find him again, and as we came round, he then shot off after them, and they all went running through the bush. There we go, there we go. Oh, this dwarf mongoose saw her. I don't know if you heard the dwarf mongoose shouting, so they've seen her and have run away, so she's a little bit too slow, unfortunately. You can hear them now alarm calling, so they're now telling each other that there's a predator, be careful. Sorry, little Xongile, you were a bit slow there, my girl. Maybe it was the sun making her feel a bit dopey that got her. But she should have a day of doing this. If she's going to hang around here, these dwarf mongoose are going to be around a lot, and so she's probably going to end up chasing them most of the day. But I'm hoping she heads towards treehouse rather than goes and joins with Hosana. That will be better. Well, Jane, you're wondering if her behavior is typical of a leopardess that's about to disperse. Well, I think it's been forced behavior, so yes, it is. I mean, she's doing exactly what any young leopard would do, is trying to take any advantage to hunt of any animal that comes past. So she's intrigued in everything. So something like a dwarf mongoose, though, she knows is manageable. She can bring that down. So she's trying to just survive, and it's more a survival instinct than a dispersal method. The other reason for it is that because Karula hasn't been around, and we don't know, maybe Karula has been with them in random times, but nobody's seen any tracks for them. So if Karula's not around, she's almost being forced to disperse, and her sort of tactics are exactly what you would expect. She's moving to where she knows she's comfortable, so she's coming into her natal territory. There's no Karula around at the moment to chase her out, but she's coming to where she knows she can be safe, because this is where she's grown up all her life. Her mom has forged this territory, and her sort of scent is still lingering in places, and so other big leopard females like Tundi or Shadow on the boundaries and peripheries know that this is Karula's territory, and they're not going to come in anytime soon. So if her mom has gone and indeed disappeared, then she is showing exactly what a dispersal young leopard would do, or a cub would do. It would come into its natal territory where it knows it's comfortable, and then try and eke out an existence by hunting anything that it can. And they will survive on small little animals like these dwarf mongoose, on insects like the termites that Brent was showing you earlier, and they'll just try and kind of eke out an existence until they get bigger and stronger. Hosana is in a little bit of a different category because he's slightly bulkier than what she is, so he can wrestle with larger prey items, and he seems to be a lot more bold in his actions. And the reason for that is because as a young male, he's kind of not really gotten the grasp of the fact that at some point a big male is going to come kick him out. He's quite used to Tingana coming along and not being too concerned with him. But now that he separates from his mom, when Tingana comes across him, he's going to now see him as a threat rather than as his offspring. And it's going to be very different for Hosana going forward. But for now, he's very confident in that this is an area that his mom is in, and he's bigger and stronger, and he's had some success chasing certain prey items, and so now he's quite bold in the way he hunts. Now look at Xongile trying to slink off because she's being shouted at. So she knows instinctively it's time to go and find somewhere to hide so that they stop shouting at her. There we go. So just like her brother was slinking when he was chasing the warthogs, so she's doing the same thing. And I think she's going to try and find herself some shade. And she's going to lie down. And I think that's going to be Xongile for the morning. I don't think we're going to stay with her much longer. I think we're going to give her a chance to rest and maybe chase her dwarf mongoose around. And while we do that and carry on our way this morning, let's go back to Ali, who I believe has got a spotted cat of her own.